Hey, I'm Kanish, and I've got some news that might be a little hard to swallow. If you're a vegetarian, I salute your commitment to a plant-based diet. But what if I told you that no one, and I mean no one, is actually 100% vegetarian? It sounds crazy, I know, but it's true. Due to the realities of modern food production, every single day, you're unknowingly eating tiny bits of animals. It's not a conspiracy, it's not a secret ingredient. It's just an unavoidable part of getting food from a giant farm to your plate. The truth is, our food isn't grown in a sterile lab. It's grown in fields, stored in silos, and processed in factories. And wherever there's food, there are critters who want a piece of the action. That's why food safety agencies all over the world, like the FDA in the US, the FSSAI in India, and EU regulators, have something called food defect levels. These are official guidelines that allow for a certain amount of, natural contaminants. We're talking about things like microscopic insect fragments, rodent hairs, and other unavoidable animal-based matter. It's not that they want this stuff in your food, it's just that getting it all out is practically impossible. Think about it. To produce food on the massive scale needed to feed billions of people, you can't have a person with a pair of tweezers inspecting every single grain of rice. It's simply not feasible. So, regulatory bodies have determined what levels are non-hazardous to our health. They've basically said, a little bit of bug is okay. So, if you've ever enjoyed a cup of coffee or a slice of bread, you've eaten bugs. And today, we're going to dive into exactly what's hiding in plain sight in your vegetarian pantry. Prepare to have your mind blown. Let's start with the one thing millions of us can't live without: coffee. That rich, aromatic brew that gets you going in the morning? It often comes with a little extra protein you didn't ask for. Coffee beans are typically grown in tropical climates and stored in massive bags for long periods before roasting. This creates a paradise for insects, especially beetles and even cockroaches. They infest the green, unroasted beans, and when those beans are processed and ground, so are the bugs. It's not a bug, it's a feature. Now, before you spit out your latte, this is so common that the US Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, has a specific rule for it. They permit up to 10% of green coffee beans by weight to be insect-infested or insect-damaged. 10%. That means for every 10 coffee beans, one can be a bug-riddled mess. The roasting process kills the insects and their eggs, but it doesn't make their fragmented bodies disappear. They just get roasted right along with the beans, adding their own, unique microscopic flavor notes to your morning Americano. Cheers! Next up, the staff of life itself, wheat and flour. Whether it's in your morning toast, your lunchtime sandwich, or the pasta for dinner, flour is a staple. But stored grain is basically a 5-star hotel, an all-you-can-eat buffet for insects. Weevils, beetles, and moths love to lay their eggs in wheat kernels, stored in giant silos. When the wheat is taken to the mill, these bugs and their larvae go along for the ride. The intense milling process that grinds wheat into fine flour doesn't magically filter them out, it just pulverizes them into microscopic fragments. So, how much extra crunch are we talking about? The FDA's guidelines for wheat flour are surprisingly generous. They allow an average of 75 or more insect fragments per 50 grams. That's about the amount of flour in a few slices of bread. And for an extra dash of flavor, they also allow an average of 1 or more rodent hairs per 50 grams. So that artisanal sourdough you love so much? It likely contains a microscopic menagerie of the critters that lived in the grain silo. It's not the baker's fault. It's just the gritty reality of turning a field of wheat into a loaf of bread. Pulses like lentils, beans, and chickpeas are the cornerstone of many vegetarian and vegan diets, praised for their protein and fiber. But they also provide a perfect nursery for a certain type of insect, the weevil. These tiny beetles have a particularly clever, if horrifying, survival strategy. The female weevil drills a tiny hole into a bean or lentil, lays an egg inside, and then seals the hole back up, making it nearly invisible to the naked eye. The larva then hatches and literally eats the pulse from the inside out. When you buy a bag of dried lentils or chickpeas, you could be buying a bunch of insect eggs hidden inside. These can survive the processing and packaging stages, patiently waiting in your pantry. When you cook them, you're not just cooking the pulses. You're also cooking the larvae and beetle fragments that were living inside. While sorting and washing can remove adult insects that might be crawling around, they do absolutely nothing to get rid of the ones that have already burrowed deep inside your dinner. It's a hidden source of animal protein you never even knew you were getting. Ah, peanut butter. The go-to snack for kids and adults, a creamy, delicious spread packed with protein. But making peanut butter is a messy business. Peanuts are grown in the ground and are often harvested and stored in open-air conditions before being shelled and processed. This exposes them to all sorts of field contaminants. Rodents scurry through warehouses, and insects flock to the nutrient-rich nuts. No matter how much they're cleaned, some of this field debris makes it into the final product. The FDA knows this, and their defect levels for peanut butter are quite specific. They allow for an average of 30 or more insect fragments per 100 grams. To put that in perspective, that's about 4 tablespoons of peanut butter, and it gets better. They also allow for an average of 1 or more rodent hairs per 100 grams. So while you're enjoying that PB&J, you might also be consuming the microscopic remains of the bugs and rodents that shared the peanut pile. It's a completely natural, albeit slightly stomach-turning part of the process. Rice, a staple food for more than half the world's population, is another grain that spends a lot of time in storage. And just like with wheat, long-term storage is an open invitation for pests. The most common uninvited guest in your bag of rice is the rice weevil. These tiny beetles are experts at infesting stored grains. They lay their eggs inside the rice kernels, and the larvae hatch and develop within, hidden from view. You might not see them, but they're there. When the rice is packaged, these weevils, both dead and alive, along with their eggs and larval remains, get mixed in. While modern processing can remove many of the adult insects, the eggs and fragments inside the grains themselves are impossible to eliminate completely. So when you boil a pot of rice, you're also cooking up a little bit of weevil. It's been happening for as long as humans have been storing grain, a timeless tradition of accidentally adding a bit of insect to our meals. It's just another example of nature finding a way, even into our sealed pantry goods. I'm sorry to do this to you, but we have to talk about chocolate. That decadent, rich, comforting treat has a dark secret. The journey of chocolate begins with cocoa beans, which are harvested, fermented, and dried, often in tropical regions with high insect populations. During storage and shipping, these cocoa beans are frequently infested by various insects, most notably the cocoa moth and the warehouse beetle. They live in, eat, and breed among the beans. When these beans arrive at the factory to be roasted and ground into cocoa liquor, the insects and their parts are ground up with them. The FDA's limit for chocolate is up to 60 insect fragments per 100 grams. That's the average chocolate bar. So for every 6 little squares of chocolate you snap off, you could be getting a dose of finely pulverized insect. It's not an additive, it's an intrinsic part of the raw material. The rich, complex flavor of your favorite dark chocolate might just have a secret ingredient you can't quite put your finger on. Eating your vegetables is always a good idea, right? Of course, but even frozen or canned veggies aren't entirely bug-free. Think about broccoli, spinach, or Brussels sprouts. These vegetables have tons of tiny leaves, nooks, and crannies that are perfect hiding spots for small insects like aphids, thrips, and mites. During harvesting, it's impossible to shake every single bug loose. And while commercial washing processes are intense, they're not perfect. Some of these tiny insects and even caterpillar fragments cling on for dear life and make it through the washing and blanching process before being flash frozen or canned with the vegetables. For example, the FDA allows up to 60 aphids, thrips, or mites per 100 grams in frozen broccoli. For canned spinach, the limit is 50 of these insects per 100 grams. So the next time you steam some frozen vegetables for a healthy side dish, just know you're likely getting a little extra microscopic animal protein along with your vitamins and minerals. Let's talk about tomatoes. Whether they're in ketchup, pasta sauce, or tomato juice, they begin their life on a vine in an open field. And you know, open fields are buzzing with insect activity, especially flies. Flies are naturally attracted to ripening and damaged fruit, where they lay their eggs. When tons of tomatoes are harvested by machine, it's honestly impossible to inspect every single one for tiny fly eggs or even recently hatched maggots. These tomatoes, all of them, go into the processing plant to be crushed, cooked, and turned into your favorite sauces and pastes. The FDA has set the acceptable limit for tomato products like ketchup at 30 or more fly eggs per 100 grams. Or if you prefer, they allow 1 or more maggots per 100 grams. Think about that the next time you're squirting ketchup on your fries. It's not that the factory is dirty, it's that tomatoes and flies have a long-standing relationship that even industrial processing can't fully break up. This next one isn't about contamination, but about a fascinating and slightly morbid act of nature. Figs have a unique relationship with a creature called the fig wasp. It's a classic case of mutualism. The fig tree needs the wasp for pollination, and the wasp needs the fig to reproduce. A female fig wasp, carrying pollen, crawls into a special opening in an immature fig. In doing so, her wings and antennae are often ripped off, trapping her inside. Her job is to lay her eggs and pollinate the fig from within. Once her mission is complete, the female wasp dies inside the fig. The fig then produces an enzyme called phycin, which digests her body, breaking it down into proteins that are absorbed by the growing fruit. So when you eat a fresh or dried fig, you are, in a very real sense, eating the remnants of a wasp that sacrificed itself for the fruit's creation. While many commercially grown figs today are self-pollinating and don't require wasps, the naturally pollinated varieties still rely on this ancient, beautiful, and slightly gruesome cycle of life and death. Finally, let's look at something sweet sugar and its less refined cousin, jaggery. Jaggery, popular in South Asia and Africa, is made by boiling sugarcane juice in large open pans, often in open-air setups. This traditional method is what gives it its rich molasses-like flavor, but it also makes it highly susceptible to insect visitors. Ants, small flies, and beetles are naturally attracted to the sweet boiling liquid and can easily fall in and become part of the final product. Even highly refined white sugar isn't completely immune. While the refining process is much more controlled, the initial stages of harvesting and processing sugarcane in vast fields mean that insects are an unavoidable part of the raw material. Regulations for sugar are less about insect parts and more about general filth, but the principle is the same. The sweet stuff attracts bugs at every stage of production, and some of those bugs will inevitably end up in the final product, ground into particles too small for you to ever notice. It's the not-so-sweet truth about our sweeteners. So, there you have it. From your morning coffee to your evening chocolate, the food you eat, even if you are the most devout vegetarian, contains microscopic traces of animal matter. It's a daily reality for every single person on the planet. I want to be crystal clear. This isn't about some gross-out factor or trying to scare you away from your favorite foods. The point is to understand the complex, messy, and fascinating reality of where our food comes from. Embracing a vegetarian lifestyle is a conscious choice about ethics, health, or the environment, and that choice is still incredibly meaningful. This isn't about companies sneakily adding insects to your food for profit. No one is grinding up cockroaches on purpose to bulk up your coffee. This is about the unavoidable natural contamination that occurs when you're growing and harvesting billions of tons of food in the real world, a world teeming with life. It's about what happens when nature interacts with our massive food systems. The amounts we're talking about are minuscule, filtered, and pulverized into oblivion, posing no risk to our health. And that's the final crucial point. Regulatory agencies like the FDA have studied this extensively and have set these defect levels because they are considered completely safe for human consumption. They represent a practical balance between the ideal of perfectly pure food and the impossibility of achieving it at scale. So you can rest easy, knowing that the tiny bit of bug in your bread is not going to hurt you. It's just a small reminder that we're more connected to the natural world and its food webs than we might think. Thanks for watching.